Welcome to episode 46 of Forest Focus, brought to you by the USDA Forest Service Pacific Southwest region. This is the first installment of a mini-series about amphibian conservation and determination. We're calling the mini-series For the Frogs. In each episode, we will be introduced to one native amphibian that can be found in California's national forests. These creatures are important to ecological health, and once we get to know them, they can deepen our connections with public lands. But each of these species is in a state of decline due to overlapping threats, including pathogens, introduced predators, habitat loss, drought, and wildfire. On their own, each threat is a great difficulty. But as a collective, they are quite the formidable foe for the frogs. Fortunately, there is a village of specialists devoted to conserving these species, despite the colossal challenge of the threat supergroup. The stories of their resolute conservation efforts, pursued through obstacles and setbacks, provides portraits of determination that we can pocket and apply to our own personal experiences with adversity.
Amphibian conservation is really important. These are native species. They're an integral part of the ecosystem. They are one of the most imperiled groups of organisms out there. They need help.
We're on the Tahoe National Forest in summer 2023, and we've come to the forest for the excitement of a conservation translocation to support an endangered species.
So right now we are circling a pond looking for Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frogs. We're just trying to see how many are in this area to get a feel for the population, to decide if we can take some from this area and move them to another pond.
As Owen Baxter, a member of the Yuba River Ranger District Wildlife Crew, just alluded, a conservation translocation is the process of finding a substantial population of a species in one location, temporarily capturing a set number, and then releasing them in another location. This is used to establish, reestablish, or increase the population of a species. Doing so can be especially helpful for an endangered species, like the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog. But, spoiler alert, instead of experiencing the triumph of a translocation, we will instead witness something more illuminating. A conservation setback that calls for determination. Most often, conservation stories are told at the point of success. Moments when a solution to a threat has been developed or populations of an endangered species have increased. These are obvious moments for our attention and should be celebrated. But these achievements emerge out of a complex journey of steps forward and steps back, which often goes untold. Conservation triumphs are rooted in years of plans made and then delayed, solutions constructed and reconstructed, and pivots and paths of progress. So our visit with the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog takes us into this convergence of disappointment and perseverance that characterizes the long game of conservation. It is such stories that can highlight a kind of determination that we can apply to the setbacks we face in our own lives.
I'm Isaac Chelman. I'm the High Mountain Lakes environmental scientist for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Region 2. For this project, we're partnering with Lauren Hoyle and her crews with Tahoe National Forest. It's a really important partnership that I appreciate.
My name is Lauren Hoyle, and I am a wildlife and aquatics biologist on the Tahoe National Forest, the Yuba River Ranger District. This week we were surveying for Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frogs in partnership with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. This population has been studied in the past and was determined to have some pretty good numbers to use as a seed population for reintroductions.
Since 2014, this population has been monitored and studied through a variety of methods, including what is called capture, mark, recapture. This involves wildlife specialists temporarily collecting a frog while in the field to measure its weight and length and to determine whether it is a female or male. Adult frogs are also given a tiny tubular microchip that goes under its skin. These are called pit tags, and each has a unique identification number. Because they require no batteries, they become lifelong barcodes for an animal, acting like a fingerprint when the tag is scanned with a chip reader. During annual surveys in the field, the wildlife specialists scan each frog when they collect it. By marking down the unique ID number and the GPS location of the frog, specialists gain a wealth of information for wildlife conservation. Back in the office, they can monitor and analyze how frogs move throughout the season and from year to year. They can also see how long individual frogs survive in the wild. One frog with a pit tag that was scanned this year is estimated to be 12 years old. All this data gives insights on the health of the population and their habitat preferences, which is used to shape plans on habitat restoration and conservation translocations.
Our goal this week was to see how many adult frogs we could find to potentially do a translocation from this site to another site to try to establish a new ranocerai population. So we would ideally want to see at least 100 frogs during one contiguous set of surveys at this site, and we would move at most 20% of the adults that we saw. Unfortunately, during the past 3 days, we did not find enough adults to undertake a translocation right now without potentially affecting the source population. All told, we saw between about 40 and 50 during the past 3 days. We also did see other life stages. So we saw some subadults, we saw tadpoles, but not as many adults as we would like to see to safely undertake the translocation.
This is certainly a disappointment for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Forest Service, who had both hoped to carry forth the translocation this week. But they are ready to pivot and already have another path in mind to help with the conservation of the endangered Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog.
We have another population close to here where we do see a lot of tadpoles.
And so what we're hoping to do is set up a contract with one of our zoo partners to rear some of these tadpoles to adulthood. So we would collect the tadpoles, bring them to the zoo, and then they'd raise them up over about a year. Sometimes it takes up to 2 years for them to reach adulthood, and then we would be able to release them at the new site as adults.
A bit further north on the Plumas National Forest, this collaboration with zoos to help the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog is already having success. Biologists from the Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and California Department of Fish and Wildlife took Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog tadpoles from the forest to the San Francisco Zoo and Gardens, where they grew into adults. And in June 2023, over 150 adult frogs were released back into the national forest. In a future episode of For the Frogs, we'll explore how a similar collaboration is supporting the conservation of a different species of frog in Southern California. But while you're here on the Tahoe National Forest, we're going to get a primer on that supergroup of risk factors that frogs found in California's national forests are facing, which we'll be hearing about throughout this series. First is the human introduction of predator species into habitats where they are not found naturally.
For most places throughout the Sierra Nevada, trout were planted by people. And so that began in earnest in about the mid-1800s, and then it picked up in the 20th century. For a while, it was done by pack mules, and after World War II, they would do aerial plants, actually releasing fry from plains into remote lake basins where the fish didn't occur naturally. Trout are very effective predators, and they will readily eat the tadpoles and young frogs. So really, when it comes to breeding and having a successful frog population, they can't really overlap with trout.
While there are many places on national forests that trout have always been present naturally, in many higher elevation lakes and ponds, this is not the case. As Isaac explained, they were brought in or planted by humans before we fully understood the long-term impacts this would have on other species, including native amphibians. This is why trout were removed from the target translocation site on the Tahoe National Forest. Frogs had been present there until the late 2000s, but the combination of fish predation and disease led to the local extinction of the frogs by the 2010s. Removing trout first to restore the habitat to its natural fishless condition increases the likelihood that a future translocation or zoo-reared reintroduction of the frogs will have success, which will help to increase the number of these frogs and keep the species further from extinction. But the legacy impacts of planted predators are not the only thing impacting frogs in California's national forests.
They face multiple threats Introduced fish is definitely one of the biggest ones. The other really big one is amphibian chytrid fungus. The actual scientific name is Batrachochytrium dendrobatitis. So it's sometimes called BD, and that disease is a major threat to amphibians throughout the world. Sadly, Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frogs are one of those. Up in this area, in the northern Sierra Nevada, the disease has actually been present for a long time. So one bit of good news is that the populations that we have sampled up here are surviving despite the disease. So it seems that there's some natural adaptation to be able to withstand the disease and persist despite its presence.
With an awareness of some of the threats that they face in mind, let's meet the star of this episode, the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog.
Nice.
We have a Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog. Kind of looks a little bit like a rock, light grayish green with dark speckles and light speckles on top. Underneath, it's yellow and light colored, and it has a bunch of chin spots.
We also get to see some of the next generation, the tadpoles. The time it takes for tadpoles to develop or metamorph into a frog varies by species, but for the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog, it is usually about 2 years.
So both of these are second-year tadpoles. Right now you can tell because he's got little leg buds, you see, but you would be able to tell about the legs because of the size. We're gonna probably take off and head towards the lake, and then we'll be done for the day.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Lauren.
While the population numbers did not allow for the translocation, these wildlife specialists are not giving up on their efforts to conserve this endangered species. Instead, they are both pivoting to another pathway and continuing to keep an eye on the population at this site to see if they can return to the plan of a translocation in a future year. And for some frog philosophy to take home, let's consider this. When we face our own disappointed hopes, the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog and the folks conserving them can illustrate how we can choose to see an obstructed plan, not as a never, but rather as a not yet. We can likewise use a setback as an invitation to invest our attention in another direction. By both embracing a period of waiting and considering other possible paths forward, we may find that the restoration we reach in time is more meaningful and lasting. Thanks for listening. For those who are curious to learn more, go over to the show description page and click on the links. To find more episodes, search Forest Focus Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have questions or suggestions for the show, email us at sm.fs.r5ffpodcast@usda.gov. Until next time, enjoy your public lands. Please remember to recreate responsibly, know before you go, and learn what you can do to prevent wildfires. Take care. This podcast is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, and the USDA is an equal opportunity provider, employer, and lender.